All right, welcome to another deep dive, everybody. We're excited to really get into this one.
Yeah.
You guys send in some really interesting stuff, and
It's a good one.
we're gonna see what we can unpack here today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, as always, you send in the sources, and we dive deep just for you.
Tailored just for you.
And today's gonna be a little bit different, a little bit
Unexpected, I think.
unexpected.
Yeah.
I like that word. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to draw some connections between two worlds that you might not think have a lot in common at first glance.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So the core source material you sent in comes from excerpts of Marine on the Mat, a book by Eric Infanti.
Okay.
And he's a really fascinating guy because he's a Marine Corps veteran, but he's also an advanced breathwork and yoga teacher.
Interesting.
So he's really bridging these two worlds.
Yeah, so we've got the Marine Corps and we've got yoga. What's the connection?
Right. So he talks a lot about his experiences in U.S. Marine Corps boot camp, and we're going to look at how that really kind of surprisingly reflects this yogic principle of Niyama.
Okay, Niyama.
Niyama, yeah.
Break that down for me. I'm not a super yogi or anything.
Of course, yeah. It's the second limb, in Patanjali's 8-limbed yoga system.
Okay.
You kind of think of these limbs as steps on the yogic path.
Okay.
And Niyama, it focuses on 5 internal practices.
Okay.
These are personal observances that help to cultivate a positive environment for growth.
Okay, so this is really about kind of the inner work, the inner landscape.
Absolutely, yeah. It's setting the stage for that internal transformation.
All right, so we've got these two seemingly very different things, right? We've got, intense Marine Corps boot camp, and then we've got these kind of internal practices of Niyama.
Right.
What are we going to uncover here today? What's the point of this deep dive?
So our mission here is to kind of reveal how those internal disciplines we find in Niyama actually kind of mirror the outward, very intense transformation of Marine boot camp training.
Okay.
And in doing so, we want to offer you a new perspective on personal development.
Okay, I like it. All right, so where do we begin with this? What does Eric Infanti talk about in the book?
Well, he starts off with this very powerful image, the yellow footprints at Marine Corps Recruit Depot, Parris Island.
The yellow footprints.
Yeah, have you heard of this?
I have heard of them.
Okay, yeah. So it's this tradition, and it's the first thing recruits encounter when they arrive at boot camp.
Like literally step onto.
Literally, yeah. They have to get on those footprints.
Oh, okay.
And there's this command that just echoes, across the depot. Get on my yellow footprints.
Wow.
And Infant, he talks about how those words. They really resonated with him.
Yeah.
Even all these years later, he still remembers them vividly.
So what's the point of those? Why this very specific, I guess, tradition or ritual?
It's a way of immediately introducing them to the structure and the ethos of the Marine Corps.
Okay.
This tradition, it actually started in the early 1960s.
Oh, wow.
And it's at both Parris Island and San Diego recruit depots.
So it's a long-standing tradition.
Absolutely. It's a rite of passage.
Yeah.
Like stepping onto those yellow footprints, you're stepping into this new world, this new identity.
Yeah, and I guess it's not just a physical thing, right? Like there's a symbolic meaning behind it.
Exactly. Infant really emphasizes that.
Okay.
It's about leaving everything behind.
Mm.
Like, your past, your old self, and you're stepping into this new role.
Yeah, and he mentions kind of an internal struggle with that, right? Like that idea of having to let go of everything from the past.
Yeah, he talks about how, he had this dream of becoming a Marine.
Right.
But then he gets there and they're telling him to forget everything.
Right, including that dream.
Included the dream, yeah.
Interesting.
It's like this paradox.
Yeah.
You've been working towards this goal.
Yeah.
But to achieve it, you have to let go of everything, even the desire that brought you there.
Right. So it's like a total reset.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what else does he describe about this initial entry into boot camp?
Well, he talks about this just sensory overload.
Okay.
Arriving late at night, the drill instructor's voice booming.
Oh, yeah.
Just this constant barrage of commands.
And no sleep, right? Like
no sleep.
They're just exhausted.
Exhausted, yeah. And he describes this this introductory speech that they're all given. You are now aboard Marine Corps Recruit Depot, Parris Island.
Yeah.
And it's delivered with this intensity that just it just sets the tone.
Yeah, and then there are these silver doors that he talks about.
Yes, the silver doors.
What are those all about?
So he describes being rushed through these silver doors, and it's made very clear that there's no going back. Like, once you go through those doors, your old life is over.
Wow.
And the doors clang shut behind them. And it's like this symbolic closing of a chapter
Right.
and the beginning of a completely new one.
It's interesting, those kind of rituals, even though they're simple things, right? The yellow footprints, the silver doors, but they're so powerful in terms of their symbolism.
Absolutely, yeah. They're designed to create a lasting impact.
Right, right. Okay, so they've gone through the doors, they're exhausted, they're in this new environment. What happens next?
Well, then comes what Infant calls a hurricane in the barracks.
A hurricane in the barracks.
Yeah, it sounds intense, right?
It does.
He describes the drill instructors descending on them, just this controlled chaos, this overwhelming experience designed to keep them on edge.
So there's a purpose to this chaos.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's not just them messing with the recruits.
No, it's a calculated training method
Okay.
to prepare them for the unexpected.
Okay. So it's like they're being like put through this pressure cooker to see how they react, to
Exactly.
kind of test their limits.
Yeah, to build resilience.
Yeah.
Because in combat, in life, you never know what's going to happen next.
Right, right. So how does all of this initial, intense I guess breaking down of their former selves and everything, how does that relate to Niyama? I'm still having a little trouble wrapping my head around that connection.
Well, think about it this way, right? They're being stripped of their individuality. They're all shaved heads, same uniforms. They're all exhausted. They're all starting from this same level.
Okay.
It's about creating equality.
Right, right.
And eliminating ego. And that really ties into the principle of
Shacha.
which is purification.
Right.
And Infant points out this quote, yoga is the martial art of the soul and the opponent is one's ego.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so in a way, this harsh, this difficult beginning is also a form of purification.
So it's like they're being cleansed of their old selves,
Exactly.
their ego, their sense of individuality.
Yeah, it's making them more receptive to the values of the Marine Corps.
Okay, I see. So we've got shocha, purification. What's the next niyama? How does that tie in?
So the next one is santosha.
Santosha.
And that's contentment.
Contentment. Okay.
It's about observing your desires without being controlled by them and accepting difficulties as opportunities to grow.
Okay. So how did that manifest in boot camp?
Well, Infant, he talks about this unwavering determination that they develop in boot camp.
Yeah.
Recruits learn to accept immense hardship.
Yeah.
The heavy gear, the constant demands, and they push through it.
It's like they're embracing the suck.
Yeah, exactly.
That term that you hear in the military.
Yeah, they're accepting the present moment.
Right.
And moving forward focus.
So it's not necessarily about being happy, but it's about that acceptance and that I guess, mental toughness.
Absolutely, yeah. Finding that inner strength.
Okay, so santosha, contentment amidst difficulty.
Right.
Okay, what's the next one?
The next one is tapas.
Tapas.
Which is the disciplined use of energy.
Disciplined use of energy. Okay, that seems like a very, military kind of concept.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's about focusing your energy, controlling your urges, and really cultivating self-discipline.
Okay.
And the literal meaning of tapas is to heat the body in order to cleanse it, which really speaks to the intensity of boot camp.
Right.
They're pushing their physical and mental limits constantly. They're developing this willpower.
So it's like forging themselves through this fire.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got shacha, purification, santosha, contentment, tapas, discipline. What's the next one on the list?
The next one is svadhyaya, which is self-study.
Self-study. Okay. Now, this one's interesting to me because, we're talking about boot camp, which is such an external, experience.
Right.
So how does self-study fit into that?
Well, Infant, he talks about how he reflected on his boot camp experience years later.
Okay.
And through that reflection, he was able to draw these parallels to yoga.
Oh, okay.
He says that even in the midst of all the chaos and the external demands, the mind remained the only passage to our actions and behaviors.
So it's about, I guess, looking inward, even when you're surrounded by all this external pressure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he talks about how those traditions like the yellow footprints, the silver doors,
Right.
They become opportunities for self-reflection
Yeah.
when you look back on them.
So it's like the seeds are planted during the experience. And then later on, you can cultivate that self-awareness and that, that reflection.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And, even the act of him writing this book is a form of slatya.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, he's examining his own experience. He's learning from it.
Right. Okay, so we've got one more niyama left. What's the last one?
And the last one is Ishvara Pranidhana.
Ishvara Pranidhana. Okay, break that down for me.
So that's about devotion and surrender to a higher power.
Devotion and surrender.
Yeah.
Okay. This one's a little bit, I don't know, it feels a little less obvious in the context of, Marine Corps boot camp.
Yeah, you're right. It might not be as direct.
Yeah.
But Infin talks about the idea of surrendering to the training process itself.
Oh, okay.
Trusting the drill instructors, trusting the system.
So it's like surrendering to this larger purpose.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Even if you don't fully understand it in the moment,
Right.
you're trusting that it's going to lead you to some kind of transformation.
Okay, so it's not necessarily about, religion or anything like that, but it's that sense of trust and surrender.
Exactly, yeah, that faith in something bigger than yourself.
Okay, I see. So, we've talked about all these niyamas, but I keep hearing this theme of the mind.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, that's really central to all of this, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Infinocris.
Yeah.
He really emphasizes that the mind is the true passage to self-discovery and total human development.
Okay, and he brings in some other, thinkers to kind of illustrate this point.
He does, yeah.
Like, who does he quote?
Well, he talks about the Dalai Lama,
Okay.
and how he emphasizes the importance of consciously directing our minds towards positive development.
Right.
Every single day.
So it's like we have this choice,
We do, yeah.
to cultivate our minds to...
Shape our thoughts.
Yeah.
And he also quotes Amy Jirsa, who's a yoga teacher.
Yeah.
And she talks about how yoga is the dance between light and dark within us, which I think is a really beautiful way of putting it.
Yeah, it is.
It's this exploration of our inner world.
Right.
And he even brings in Buddha, who said that we are shaped by our thoughts. We become what we think. When the mind is pure, joy follows like a shadow that never leaves.
Yes.
And that ties back to the niyama of shacha, the purification of the mind.
Right. So it all comes back to the mind, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Like whether we're talking about boot camp or yoga, it's the mind that's the key.
It's that foundation.
Exactly, yeah.
So, as we're wrapping up here, what's the main takeaway for our listeners? What do you want them to kind of walk away with from this deep dive?
Well, I think the main takeaway is that niyama is important.
Okay.
And it's not just for yogis.
Okay.
It's something that we can all apply to our lives.
Okay.
These principles of purification, contentment, discipline, self-study, and devotion, they're relevant to all of us. And, Infan, he makes this point that the future depends on our present actions.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so if we want to create a better future for ourselves,
Yeah.
we need to cultivate these positive qualities in the present moment.
Okay, so it's not just about, reading about these things, it's about actually putting them into practice.
Exactly.
Right. And I think it's also interesting that, we can find these lessons in the most unexpected places. Right? Like, we wouldn't necessarily think that Marine Corps boot camp and yoga have anything in common.
Right.
But when we look a little deeper, we see these connections.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good reminder that, life is full of teachers.
Yeah.
We just have to be open to learning from them.
So what would you say to our listeners who are, maybe intrigued by this? They want to explore these ideas further.
Well, I would definitely encourage them to check out Eric Infanti's book, Marine on the Mat. Yeah. It's a really insightful read, and it's full of personal stories and reflections that I think a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah, and even if, you're not interested in the military or yoga specifically, I think there are some universal truths in there about, human transformation and the power of the mind.
Absolutely.
So one last thing before we go, I want to leave our listeners with a question, something to kind of ponder.
Okay.
Think back to a time in your life when you went through a major change.
Okay.
It could have been a difficult time, a challenge, something that really pushed you to your limits.
Yeah.
Or it could have been a time when you made a conscious decision to transform yourself.
Right.
To change your habits, your mindset, whatever it was.
Okay.
As you look back on that experience, can you see any elements of niyama in it? Maybe without even realizing it at the time, were you practicing purification,
Okay.
contentment, discipline, self-study, devotion? And how did those principles, even if you weren't aware of them, how did they help you navigate that change?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And then thinking forward, how can you consciously use these principles now to support your growth, your development, your journey? So, something to think about.
Food for thought?
Yeah, food for thought.
Absolutely.
All right, well, thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
And we'll catch you next time.
See you then.